Hi, welcome to this DCP web tutorial. In today's tutorial, we'll be using Blender 2.8 to create this Sci-Fi Space Ship Animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Blender. We'll right click here and just open up Blender here. And if you've not installed Blender before, you don't know much about this software, I'll put a link in the YouTube description explaining how to install this software. I'll also put a link in the YouTube description showing some other examples of tutorials that I've created. Let's go ahead and click on General here, and we'll click on the cube and delete that. So just click on the cube and then press the delete key. Click on this light source and then press the delete key. So we're just left with the camera here. Let's go to File, Save As, and I'm going to call this project Sci-Fi Spaceship -01. So call your file whatever you want, but put a -01 at the end, and that will make sense in a little while. Let's go ahead and click Save here, and let's just middle mouse click so we can see the X and Y like this. We're going to press the Shift A, so press Shift and A, and we're going to insert a cylinder. So we have a cylinder here. Click on the properties down here in the bottom left and type in 15. So we've got 15 size to this cylinder, and we want to now rotate that cylinder. So on the x-axis, type in 90 here, 90. So make sure the cylinder is selected and type in 90, and now you can see it's sitting flat down like this. Let's middle mouse click and rotate around here. And what we want to do is go into edit mode. So go into edit mode. You can go up to here and click edit mode, or you can just press the tab key. The tab key on your keyboard will take you in and out of edit mode, yeah? So that's a quick way to do that. Click on, make sure you're in edit mode, click on the faces option here, select faces, and left click outside. Right now it's highlighted orange, that means everything is selected. So left click outside and then click on this face here, this front face, this one here. Middle mouse click and rotate around to the other side, hold down the shift key and click on this face as well. Holding down the shift key, and when you left click, you'll be able to select both faces. Let's press the delete key on the keyboard and select faces here. Now we have a hollow cylinder like this. Let's go back to object mode here and go to File, Save. And the next thing we want to do is just sort out the dimensions of this this particular segment. So let's set the X here to 4. We'll set the Y to 3. And now you can see this sort of shape here, right? It's not a perfect circle. We want it to be like this sort of oval type shape. Let's zoom out a little bit here, and we want to click on this segment and duplicate it 4 times. So click on it, it will highlight orange like this. Press Shift and D and then hit the enter key. Press Shift and D and hit the enter key. Do that one more time and then do it one more time. So when you press Shift and D, you're duplicating. When you hit enter, it's going to place the object exactly where the previous object was. So you can see we've got 4 cylinders here, but they're all sitting in exactly the same location. On this first cylinder here, we're going to name this, let's call it Space Ship Main. So we're going to call it Spaceship Main. This is going to be the main part of our spaceship. The other ones we're going to call Cylinder 1 here. We're going to call this Spaceship SEG1 for Spaceship Segment 1. So if you select that text and copy, press Ctrl C to copy, you can easily double click on this second one and name it 02. Double click here, name it 03, and then double click here and name it 04. So we've got the main ship, and then we've got 4 segments here. Let's go to File, Save, and we'll click on the main ship and set the Z axis, or sorry, the Z scale to 32. So now you can see this this body here on the length, right, of the ship, and we want to click on X-ray, show X-ray, and that makes our objects almost like, think of it, making them see-through, so that we can see other objects that sit inside of this particular object. Let's click on this first ship segment, and what we will do is set its let's just see, we'll set the Z-axis, or the Z scale should I say, to 4. And what we will do is press number 7 on our keyboard. That will take us into the top orthographic view. So we're looking at the objects from the top now. We can click on our move tool, and then this green arrow, we want to hold down our left mouse button, hold down the control key, and drag that segment to the back here, right to the end here, so it snaps right at the end of this other cylinder, the main cylinder, right? And what we want to do now is click on segment 2. So click on segment 2 and set that to 4. Click on segment 3 and set that to 4. And then click on segment 4 and also set that to 4 on the z-axis. So they're all going to be the same size, you could say, the same height or length. Now let's go back and select segment 1 here. In fact, what we'll do is we're going to add another object, and that's going to be called an empty. So we're going to press Shift and A, and we're going to insert an empty, empty cube. So we've got an empty cube right here, and we're going to hold down the control key. Sorry, we're going to click here first on the move tool, click on this green arrow, drag down and hold down the control key, and drag it so it snaps right to the end here, like this. Then we'll press the letter N on our keyboard, and we'll go to view here, and as we scroll down here in the lock view to object, we're going to select that empty. All that basically does, if I press N to close this, you press N, you can click on this little arrow here and that will open and close it as well. So just press N on the keyboard to close it. Basically what we've done there is we've added this empty. The empty doesn't render out in our render, it's just an empty object. Think about it that way. It can be like a placeholder almost. And what that allows us to do is when we press N here and lock to that particular object, when we rotate around, we're not rotating around this middle point anymore, we're rotating around that particular cube. So if we were to go like here, we're rotating around this point, right? And that just makes it easier to do the modeling for this particular segment at the back of this ship here. So we can actually hide that empty. We don't need to see it. It's only there so that we can rotate around it easily. Now one thing you'll notice, and you might see this in Blender, here's a little tip for you, right? Can you see like these black stuff here, all of these like hashings and stuff? That's because this particular segment is exactly the same dimensions in terms of its X and Y as the main cylinder. And you'll see that in these other ones as well. So to fix that, and that can cause problems in renders. So when we click on the main ship cylinder here, you'll see it's 4 by 3 here, yeah? X and Y. If we click on segment 1, which is the one right at the end here, you can see it's also 4 by 3. But if I click on this number 4 and reduce it by 1, just by one click, and then click on the number 3 and reduce that by 1, all of those hashes will get removed. So now these two objects, the main spaceship body and this segment 1, are not sitting on exactly the same plane in the same dimensions. One is tiny, just a fraction smaller than the other, and that will resolve that problem. Sometimes when you're rendering out things and you see some like funny renders in your materials, that's probably the reason why you've got two objects sitting exactly on the same plane. So Blender's like, which one do you want me to use? I don't know, I'm going to combine both of them and make a mess. So let's go to File, Save. Let's go to File, Save As, and we'll save this as version 2. So just call it ship version. You click on this plus sign, it will increment it by 1. That's why we put 01 here. So all we ever have to do is click the plus sign to make 02, and we'll go ahead and click the save button here. Okay, so let's make sure we've got spaceship segment 1 selected here, and we'll go into edit mode, and we'll press A on our keyboard, the letter A. A will select all of these segments with this here on this segment 1. Select all of the panels, you could say. Let's right click and subdivide and set that to 10, and then go back into object mode. Then go over to the modifiers here, add a modifier, and we want to add a, let's see, a subdivision surface here, and set the render and the viewport to 3, and then click apply. So you won't really see much difference there, but go to add modifier now and go to displace. And in the displace modifier, the strength you want to set it to minus 0.1. So make sure you set it to minus 0.1 here. Then click on texture, click on new texture here, new. And after you do that, go down to the texture tab here. And in the drop down here, you want to select distorted noise. Then click on this drop down and set cell noise. Click on this one and also set it to cell noise and set the amount to 2. Set the amount to 2. And now you can see, let's turn off our X-ray. So this is the X-ray. If we turn that off, now you can see like the sort of the hull of the body of the ship is going to have this sort of textured sort of geometric shape, which I think looks pretty cool, right? So that'll be like one segment done. So let's go to File, Save As, and save it as version 3. And then we can go ahead and repeat that logic, but tweak it slightly so that the other segments are slightly different. We don't want them to all be the same, right? So let's press number 7. That takes us into the top view. And what we want to do is temporarily hide this number 1. So let's just click on the eye icon. That will hide it. Can you see it? Just hide it away. Because we're going to move our next segment down. So let's click on segment 2. Click on the move tool. Hold down the control key and drag it to the same place. And because we're rotating around that invisible empty here, we can then rotate around here and easily just get our view correct like this. And you can see that same sort of hashing error. So let's go ahead and click on the object data and set the X and the Y. Just reduce it by one click here. So 3.99 and 2.99 here. So that will get rid of that problem. And then go into edit mode and press A to select everything in here. Press right click here and go subdivide, set it to 10, and then go back into object mode. Then go over to the add modifier. Do you remember what we added? We just added subdivision. So click that, set it to 3 on both of these, and click apply. Then we went back to the add modifier and we selected displace. So we're going to displace it, set it to minus 0.1. And then go to here, click new for texture. And then click on the texture tab and go to the, where is it gone? Distorted noise. Click on the first drop down, set it to cell noise. Click on the second drop down, set it to cell noise. And this time, change it so that it's, last time we set it to 2, right? So we don't want exactly the same thing to appear twice, exactly the same. So this time maybe we can set it to 3, we can set it to a lower value so you can have like more squared out segments. The higher the value, the more gaps you're going to have, and sometimes you want a few gaps in there. So I would say around 2.6, something like that. And we can actually change that afterwards. So if we don't like what it looks like, we can easily change it, we can reduce it, and if we increase it, you can make it really random, right? So first one was set to 2. Let's set this one to 3.2 as an example, right? So let's go to File, Save, and let's hide that segment 2. So let's hide it, and we'll click on segment 3. Let's press number 7 on our keyboard. That takes us back into the top view. We've got our move tool already selected. Hold down the control key and drag it here. Middle mouse click and then zoom down into this object. Go to its object data. Reduce it by 1 again. What do we do next? We went to edit mode, press A to select everything in here, right click and subdivide. Set this value to 10, that's its maximum value. Go back into object mode, and then we add the modifier. Let's click add modifier, let's click here, and we want to subdivide. Set them to 3, and then click apply. Then click on the add modifier and go to displace, and set this value to minus 0.1. and then go down, click on the new texture here, then click on the texture tab, and then set that to distorted. Click on the drop down, set it to cell noise, set it to cell noise, and change this value to a different value. So I think we did like 3 something like before. Let's set this to something like 5.2, and don't worry about it too much because we can change these afterwards ourselves. Yeah, we can easily go back in here and tweak it and change it if it doesn't look quite right. So I won't worry about that too much. Let's go to File, Save, and let's press number 7 on our keyboard. That takes us back into the top view. We'll hide segment number 3 and we'll click on segment number 4, and we'll left click on the green arrow, hold down the control key and drag it down here, middle mouse click and zoom in, and then go to the context here, decrease it by 1 value on the X and Y, click on that object, and then go to edit mode. Make sure you click on it here, then you see it highlight orange like this. Go into edit mode and then press A to select all of the faces, right click, subdivide, and then set it to 10, and then go back out into object mode here, and then go to the modifier here, go to subdivision, set it to 3 and click apply, and then go to the modifier again and go to displace, set it to minus 0.1 and click new on the texture. Go to the texture tab, click on distorted noise and select cell noise from both of these, and then set it to a different value. Maybe 10 is the maximum, right? So maybe we'll set this to a lower value, something like 1.4, something like this. Okay, so we've got kind of built the different segments for our ship, the outer part of our ship. That was the idea here, to build these different segments, and now we can move those segments along this line here, or this body, to build it out to see what it's going to look like. So let's do that quickly now. Let's go to File, Save, and File, Save. Let's go to File, Save As, and save it as version 4 first. I like to save it in versions because as we're going through this tutorial, as you're building things in Blender, it's nice to save it as versions, because if you ever want to go back to a certain point before you commit to a certain action in Blender, you've got these previous versions. So it's nice to have that. Let's click Save here, and let's turn on all of these segments, right? Turn them all on. So we've got segment 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll click on segment 1, and we're going to hold down the control key and drag it so that it's not overlapping these other segments. Click on segment. It doesn't really matter what order you do these in, right? So maybe it'll be wise. Actually, it doesn't even matter. So we'll click on segment 2 and we'll drag that up here. And we'll click on segment 3 and we'll drag that here. So now we've built the first part, you could say, of the ship, right? The back part of the ship. Let's press number 7. We can click on segment 4, and we want to leave that exactly where it is, but we want to duplicate it. We want to make a copy of it, right? So what we'll do is press Shift and D. Let's move your mouse cursor into the viewport. Press Shift and D to duplicate it, and let's call this segment 5. In fact, we should call it segment 4A. Would make more sense because it's a copy of that original 4 segment, right? And then just hold down the control key and drag it to here, and then you can pick or click on any of these. So let's click on this one. This one happens to be segment 2. So let's go into the viewport, press Shift and D to duplicate, and call it segment 2A, and then hold down the control key and drag it to this position here. And let's just repeat that, right? So we need segment 1, we haven't replicated yet. So let's right click on, in fact, let's click on it and then go to the viewport, press Shift and D, and then call it segment 1A. Click on that, hold down the control key and then drag that to here, like this. And we've got one more space to replicate one more object. So we've done 1, 2, 3, and maybe we'll just replicate 3 here. Let's do 3. So let's click on it, move to the viewport. When you're inside of this section here, collections, if you press Shift and D, it won't duplicate. So you have to move your cursor to the viewport, then press Shift and D, then hit Enter. That's just a little tip for you there. Let's label it 3A, and then hold down the control key, drag that here, and that makes the next part. And sometimes we may, let's just middle mouse click, and let's just see. So I think this is going to be okay, right? We might tweak this. So we've got the advantage of just going in here and changing this to change its design. So if we want less squares or more squares or whatever we want, we can just go in here and change the amount here on these cell noises, and we can affect how that ship looks like, right? But we don't want it repetitive. That's why we made 4 segments, so each one is slightly different, and we just don't want it to look exactly the same. In fact, what we'll do is press number 7. So we'll go into the top view, we'll press number 7, and we'll click on this object here, the second one in. In fact, we'll click on the third one in. So this is the first, the second, and the third one. This third one in. And to randomize it a bit more, you can click on the object data here, and I believe on the not on the Z, it should be on the Y, right? So on the Y, we're going to type in 180, and that's going to actually flip the object completely over. So we can click on this one, and then on the Y, we can type in 180 on the rotation, just to randomize it a bit more. And maybe we'll do it on this one. So let's click here, type in on the Y 180. So all we're doing is rotating the object around 180 degrees, so that it's even more random down the side of the ship. Okay, let's go to File, Save, and File, Save As, and save it as version 5. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create the rocket booster section that's going to be at the back of the ship. Now this actual segment here, this one here, segment 4, we don't actually want to keep that, but I don't want to delete it either. So what we can do is just hide it. So what we'll do is click on the eye icon here, and that hides it from the render only. It doesn't, sorry, it hides it from the viewport only. It doesn't actually hide it when we render it out. So to hide it when we render, we'll click on these filter options here. Click on this camera option. It says display and render. Click this one, and then close this, and then you get this little camera icon here. And we can click on that as well, and now it will be hidden in the viewport, but also hidden in the final render scene as well. I'm going to leave this here because we may want to use it again. We might choose to use it, we may not, but not worth deleting something if we don't need to delete it. Let's go to File, Save As, and we'll save this as version 5. And what we want to do is we want to create this new section. So let's press number 7. That takes us into the top view. We'll press Shift and A and insert another cylinder. So we've got another cylinder here, and let's label that cylinder, let's call it spaceship booster, yeah? Something like that. Call it spaceship booster, call it whatever you want. Try and name all of your objects with a similar name for what you're creating, and it's easier to find later. So spaceship booster, and we want to change its segments here to 15 like before, so 1, 5. So it's going to have 15 segments. Let's just turn on our X-ray. Let's turn that on. Let's just see, where is it? Here. So we've got this little sphere going on here. Let's zoom out a little bit. Here. Okay, so we want to rotate this. So let's click on that cylinder. Let's go to the object data. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis here, and we're going to set the scale to 4, set the y to 3, and set the z to 4, like this. So it's pretty much the same style of segment we created before. Let's zoom out a little bit here. Click on the move tool here, click on the green arrow and hold the control key and drag it to this position here at the back of the ship, and then we're going to middle mouse click, and we're going to rotate around so that we can get inside the object. So we're looking inside now, so we're looking at it from inside the object, and we're going to go to edit mode here, and we'll go to, let's turn off our X-ray. We don't really need that at the moment, so turn off X-ray, and then press the letter A twice very quickly. So when you press the letter A twice quickly, it unselects all of the objects, right, or the faces. If you press A once, it will select everything. A twice will unselect everything. And we're going to click on faces here, click on this inside one, and then hit the delete key and say delete face. We don't actually have to do that, but I think it's a kind of a nice thing that if you ever want to fly inside of this ship, maybe for some animation sequence, this end part will be empty, right? Let's middle mouse click and rotate back around, and we're having that same issue. Can you see like this like hashing on the side? And that's because the objects are sitting on exactly the same dimensions. So let's scale it down by 1 here, and let's scale it down by 1 here. So we just make it slightly smaller than the ship main here. Let's click back on this cylinder, this new one. Actually, let's see. Yeah, let's name this. We should really rename this. So let's call it. Let's just click on it. We need to turn. Let's go back into object mode here, and this cylinder at the end, it's not really a cylinder, is it? It's going to be called Space Ship Booster. Let's give it a good name so we know what it is. If you call it cylinder, imagine all of these are called cylinder now. You're not going to know what is what, so at least give it a good name, then we know what it is when we're looking for it later. So what we want to do now is go back into edit mode, and we want to have our faces select tool here, and we're going to click on this first one here. So look, here you can see it's selected. We're going to hold down the shift key and select the one next to it. So now these two are selected, just these two faces, and we want to skip one and then select another two. So let's middle mouse click, hold down the shift key and select these two. So this one here is unselected, but these two at the top and these two on the side are selected. Let's middle mouse click and rotate around and then select these two. So we're skipping this one here. We'll middle mouse click around, we'll skip this one and select these two, and then we'll rotate around again, skip this one and select these two. So it's almost like selecting every other one, right? Let's see. Now, what we want to do is In fact, we did one thing wrong, right? So let's correct this. My bad. Let's click outside of the object, so we unselect everything. We'll click on this face, and we want to extrude this first. So let's click on this face, press E to extrude, and then Y, and extrude this out. Not a lot, by about probably this much, right? We want to create another section here first. So let's deal with this section first quickly. Let's click on our inset faces, and we'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it closely. We're going to click in one of these top corners and drag in like this, and then let go of the mouse button, and then we're going to pan to the side a little bit, and this face here is selected, and you can see how much depth you got there. You've got quite a lot of depth to work with, right? So what we will do is in fact the X-ray is a pretty good idea to use it at this point. So this front face is selected. We're going to press E to extrude and then Y, and we're going to drag it in a bit, not too far, so somewhere like here. So we've got this like indentation. So we'll turn off the X-ray. Let's turn that off. Let's in fact click solid view here. Make sure you're in solid view. And then you can see it's kind of indented like this. That's kind of the idea of what I wanted there. Now, what we want to do is click. Let's see what's going on here. Need to make sure we're the right way up, right? So this is the correct way up. You'll know that if you're looking at it from underneath, it's kind of confusing to work out whether this is underneath or the top. You know that by the camera. The camera is down here, and you want the camera to be above. So if you middle mouse click and rotate all the way around, you'll see the camera is here. Then you know you're at the top, right? You're looking at it from the top angle. You want to look at it from the top angle. We're going to click this one here, this face, and then click the one next to it and hold down the shift key. Select those two, rotate around, miss one, hold down the shift key and select these two, rotate again, miss this one, hold down the shift key, select these two, rotate again, we'll miss this one here, hold down the shift key, select these ones, and then miss this one, hold down the shift key and select these ones. Let's rotate around back to the top, and we want to extrude these, right, or scale them. Let's try and scale them first. I think we want to scale it, right? So let's press S to scale. It's worth moving your mouse a bit further away from the object, because when you scale it will be easier to control, and I think we want to see it at this sort of angle here. Let's press S to scale, and we're going to scale it out. Let's see. In fact, we don't want to do that. We want to press E to extrude and then S to scale. So press E to extrude. If you do something you don't like it, let's say you scale it like this, and you know it's all messed up and it doesn't look right, just press Control and Z to undo that. And if the faces are still selected, so you're still good there. So we're going to press E to extrude. Let's move our mouse over here. E to extrude, then S to scale. We're going to scale it out like this, so about this far. And we're going to get these nice little sort of shapes down the side of the ship here at the back, like these little booster things going on here. So this is your choice. It's all about your own sort of preference as to what you want to do here. It's entirely your choice, right? So we've got something going on like that, and then maybe what we'll do, just to enhance this design a little bit, we'll select this one here, this one, and we're going to select this one here. So hold down the shift key, and we'll select this one here, hold down the shift key, we'll select this, where is it, this one here, and we'll select finally this one over here. So we're basically selecting the ones where we create the gap, right? Can you see? And we want to, let's zoom in on this one here, and we want to right click here and subdivide, and we're going to subdivide it by 3 should be enough. And then we're going to click on the inset tool here, and we're going to drag in from the side here just a little bit. Let's drag it so it's about here, roughly around here. We're going to let go of the mouse button, and then we want to extrude these out from the side. So let's press let's see, what we do is press S to scale. You want to get it to maybe this sort of angle here, so you can see the thickness of this one's here. So we'll press S to scale, move your mouse a bit further away, press S to scale and scale those out. And maybe we'll scale them out quite wide, something like this. So now we've got this sort of shape at the back of the rocket. And then you can play around with this a lot more, right? You can go and mold more shapes out of it. You can do loads of other stuff. It's entirely your choice. I'm going to stick with this for now. I'm not going to go too far into modeling the back of these boosters, but I kind of like this. I think this is going to look okay in our final animation. So something like this looks pretty cool. And you can go and do as much detailed work in it. You can subdivide these and, you know, extrude those as well, and you can do loads of other things. It's entirely your choice. Maybe we do one more little example. So let's click on this face here and this one here. Let's click on these two faces again. We'll select these ones here. We'll select these ones here, and we'll hold down the shift key and select these ones here. Let's rotate it back around to the top. That will be over here, and we'll subdivide these. So let's right click and subdivide, and we'll subdivide those by let's say 4, and then we'll click our inset tool, and let's zoom in here a little bit. Let's get closer, and we'll drag in a little bit here, just a small amount, and then we'll press E to extrude and then S to scale these out. So we can scale them out like this, something like this. And that can just add a bit more detail to the model, right? You can see now we've got this sort of shape going on. And you can play around with this as much as you like. You can chop and change it to your heart's content, right? It's all down to design and what you want to try and achieve. So I'm going to leave it like this. I could go well into a lot of detail and do a lot more work on this, but I think this is okay for now. So let's go to File, Save As, and let's save this as version 6. Let's click Save here. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is create the front of the spaceship. So let's go ahead and go back into object mode here, and let's press number 7. So that takes us back into the top view, and we're going to click on the ship main here. Ship main, that's that main body part of the ship, and we're going to move our mouse cursor to in the screen, press Shift and D to duplicate it, and call this spaceship front. Let's call it spaceship front, and we want to change the Z-axis, or the Z scale should I say, to 2. I'm going to make it much smaller. Let's zoom in and move out. You click on our move tool, click on the green arrow, and then drag that part so that it overlaps just at the end here. So let's press number 7. Make sure you're in top view, and let's do one other thing. Let's zoom out a little bit here. We want to click on we want to show the empty here, enable it so you can see it. Click on it, and it's going to be down here, right? Let's turn on our X-ray so we can see inside of the ship inside, and we'll hold down the control key and drag that empty right to the top edge here. So it sits right at the top here. Now when we middle mouse click, we're going to rotate around that empty, right? So we're about to see inside and model the front of the ship. So let's go ahead and turn off the X-ray because we don't really need that. And the first thing we want to do is we'll hide this empty, and we want to give this part of the ship some thickness. We want to solidify it. So to do that, let's go to the modifier, add modifier, and we're going to do solidify and just set it to 0.02. Just give it one thickness like that, 0.02, and then click OK. And you can see that rendering issue here, right, with the overlap. So let's go to our context menu here and set the X and the Y, just reduce it by 1 value, and then you'll get rid of that problem. So let's go ahead and go into edit mode, and in edit mode, so make sure you're in edit mode, make sure you've got face selection here, and click on this face here, this one here, right on the edge, and then go to select similar, and then select normal like this. And what that will do is make sure your value is, like, the threshold is quite low here. Yeah, you want to have it quite low, and then Blender will go and select all of them similar faces that you can see already, or what you've selected to. And that just allows us to do something like this. It allows us to extrude this. So let's press E to extrude, and we can extrude out like this. And then we want to press S to scale and scale it in a little bit. So we're going to build like the front of the ship here, right? So S to scale. And then we're going to press E to extrude one more time, and of a similar sort of distance, and then press S to scale that in as well. And You can scale it out wider if you want, or you can scale it more narrow. Obviously we're building the front of the ship, so we want to make it more narrow, something like this. And then we'll press E to extrude again, similar sort of distance. Sometimes it's worth moving your mouse cursor further away. Then when you scale, you can really scale quite precise. If you move your cursor really close and you're scaling, then it's a little bit more tricky. So move it further away, and then you can scale more precisely like this, right? So let's extrude it here to something like this, and then let's zoom in a little bit here, and we're going to do E to extrude a little bit more, S to scale finally to a point here, and then go to face and then select fill. So we'll fill the front of this in so it's solid. That's kind of the basic shape of our front of our ship, right? And we want to just improve this a bit now, right? So let's go ahead and we'll select, make sure face select is selected here, and we'll click on this face here and then hold down the shift key and click on this one, and we're going to skip this face here, and we're going to hold down the shift key and select these two, skip this one here, hold down the shift key and select these two, we'll skip this one, select these two, and we will skip this one and select these two. So it's every other two. And now we just want to press let's see, we want to press E to extrude and then S to scale, and we want to scale these out a bit like this. So we've got these sort of panels going on here, right? Something like this. And then we want to click on this one here, hold down the shift key, select this one, hold down the shift key, select this one, and this one. So it's almost the ones that we didn't select previously, right? Similar logic. And then we're going to press E and then S to scale those, and we'll scale those out a bit as well like this. We're kind of building some shapes here for the front of our spaceship, right? You can do some more detailed work in here. I'll show you some examples in a moment. So what we want to do now is click on this face here, this one. We'll select this one. We'll select, let's see, let's get this right. So we don't want that one. We want this one here. So we want to do these two. Then we want this one here. So we're kind of skipping two, right? So selecting one, skip two, select one, skip two, select this one, skip these two and select the bottom one here, skip these two, and let's see if we're getting this right. That doesn't look right, does it? 1, 2. Let's see. I think yeah, let's go ahead and select this one here is right. Yeah, that's right. So we're basically skipping 2 blocks on all of them, right? Skip 2 here, skip 2 here. So yeah, we're selecting all of those faces there. And let's zoom into those faces. We want to right click and subdivide and set that to something like 4. 3, 4 would be good. Let's do 3. And then let's zoom in here. Let's do our inset faces and let's drag in like this. Let's drag in, say about this much. And then we want to press, let's zoom out here a little bit. We're going to press E to extrude. So press E and then S. We're going to extrude these out as well like this. Something like this. We've got these shapes going down the side, and you can go and do as much detailed work as you want. You start playing around with all of these faces and cut them and slice them and extrude them until you get a shape that you like, right? I'm quite happy with this. I think it'll be fine, and again we can come back and remodel it, we can change it. I don't want this tutorial to be too long in terms of modeling, but we've got a good base of a ship working now. So I think this is going to look pretty good. So let's go to File, let's see, let's go to File, Save As, and let's save this as version 7. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is add some HDRI lighting to our scene. So we're going to click on Edit Mode and go back into Object Mode. Let's go to our web browser and we're going to type in HDRI Haven. I'll put a link to this website or the particular material we're going to download, the HDRI map. We'll scroll down and we'll click on browse 200 here, and then we'll scroll to the side and we're going to click on nighttime, and then we're going to select this Shanghai one. So I'll put a link to this map in the YouTube description, or you can just go to HDRI Haven and find that particular map and click on 4K download. So click on the 4K download here, right? 4K. Just going to download that file. Let's minimize this, open up this folder. This is where we're saving all of our work. We'll make a new folder in here, call it HDRI, and then we'll just drag and drop this HDRI into here, and we can close down our web browser and close down this, and let's go back to Blender. Let's go back to Blender here, and we're gonna left click outside of this this object here, and we'll go to shading, and we will go to the world settings here, world. So we're going to add a HDRI map. So let's zoom in a little bit. I'm just going to drag this a little bit closer here, and I'm going to press Shift A and insert a shader background here. Then I'm going to press Shift A and insert a mix shader and drag it between these two like this, and connect the background to the shader here like this. Then I'll press Shift A and we want to insert a texture image texture here. Let's just drag this to the side, it'll be easier for you to see. And then we want to press Shift A and insert a vector mapping. Then Shift A and input texture coordinates, and then finally Shift A, input light path here. So we want to connect the generated to the vector here, the vector to the vector here, and then the color to, let's see what we're doing here. We missed something. 1 minute. Color to the color here like this, and the vector to the vector here. Sometimes when you drag them they just don't connect. You have to leave a little bit more space and then they'll connect correctly, right? You can drag it back like this. So this should be okay, and then we'll connect the is camera array to the factor over here. Let's drag this aside. Let's drag this over to the factor here. You can see how it's kind of laid out like this. And we'll click open, and we'll click on the HDRI and select that map and click open here. And what we'll do is set the z-axis here to 206 degrees. We can play around with that afterwards. If we go into our render view, let's go into render view, and let's see, make sure this is working correctly. What we need to do is click on the background here and set it to black for now. And we haven't got no materials on here, so we're not really going to see the HDRI lighting at the moment because none of this ship has any sort of material applied to it. So we need to apply some materials before this HDRI map will work correctly. So we're going to do that next, I think. So for now, the background, we're going to leave it sort of light grey. So let's just change that to light grey. That just helps us when we're modeling. It just makes life a lot easier, right? And we'll leave it in, let's go to look dev for now. In fact, we'll leave it in solid view for now. And let's go back to our object mode. Yeah, let's go back to object mode. In fact, let's go click on layout here, layout. And we want to add some materials to this ship so that when we look at our HDRI lighting, we can actually see what's going on. The first thing we should do is click File Save and then go to File Save As. And we've added a HDRI map, so let's save it as a new version, version 8 here. Okay, so let's start adding some materials to our object. The first one that we'll work on is the main part of this spaceship, right? The spaceship main. And we'll select that, and then we'll go down to the material here. Let's double click on spaceship main and copy the text here. So just select this and copy the text, then click new, and then in the material here, just paste and hit enter. So you name the material the same as what the component is or the object in the scene. It just makes it easier to find later and select things. And we want to make this an emission shader. So where it says surface here, click it and then go to emission, and we want to set this to 8.4, and then you can pick any color you like. For now I would suggest selecting like an orange color, and then later we can go and change these material colors. I'll show you how to change them and create other color variations afterwards. So what we can do now is go ahead and click on our render view, and when we click on render view, you'll see it ain't looking quite right. So let's just go to file, save here, and let's go to our render settings over here. So in our render settings, we want to turn on ambient inclusion, turn on the bloom, turn on screen space reflections, and we want to make sure volumetrics is set to 4 here, like this. So this should be okay. In fact, we can just leave it on 8. We don't even need to set it on 4. Just leave it on 8 like this. And in the bloom settings, we want to change these slightly. So we'll just change the radius to around 4.95. Let's say to around 4.95. And then the intensity, we're going to set that to 0.050. We can adjust these slightly later. In the screen space reflections options here, we want to turn off half trace, set the trace position and set the roughness all the way to the top. Set them to the max here. And I think that's pretty much all we're going to do in here. And what we need to do now is add some more materials to other parts of our scene or our object. So let's go to File, Save, and what we will do is click on the Spaceship Segment 1. So let's add the materials for this spaceship Segment 1. So what we would do first of all is click on Spaceship Segment 1, and we'll go to the material. In fact, double click on this and copy it. So just double click and copy that name, and then let's go to the material, click new material, and name this material not Spaceship Segment 1, just call it Spaceship Segment. Yeah? So we're going to use this material on many of the segments, and we'll leave it as a principal shader, and we need to set the color quite dark, almost to a black. It would probably be worth us just middle mouse clicking, holding down the shift key, and then zooming in onto this segment here so we can see it a bit clearer here. Sometimes when you're applying a material, right now the viewport is locked to the empty right at the front of the ship. So you can press the letter N, you can open this up and see it's locked to the empty. We should lock it to the Spaceship Segment 1, and then when we rotate now, let's just zoom in here. Let's just move it to the side a little bit. So when we rotate now, we're going to rotate around this segment 1 and we can see it a bit more clearly. It just make life a lot easier. So we've added this material here. We want to set the metallic all the way to the top and set the roughness to 0.2. Then you can see it's like a dark sort of shiny material. Let's press N on our keyboard to close down that control panel, and now we want to go into the shader. So go into shading here at the top and go into the object data, because we want to add a bump map to this this particular material. So let's press Shift A and insert a vector bump map here, and then press Shift A and insert a checkered one here. And let's turn on our render view. So click here to turn on render view so you can see it in the viewport. And let's zoom in on this panel here so we can see it a bit more clearly. This panel, this black panel. Let's connect the normal here to the normal down here. Let's zoom in here. So connect normal to normal, and then connect color to the height here. And we'll set the scale to 30. Say to 30, and then you'll get these little lines. See these little paneled lines? And this should add some nice texture to our material, so that when we replicate it across it, it looks like these are little sort of panels that have been built for this spaceship that we're creating. So let's go back to the layout. Let's go back to the layout here. You can see this white, and this white is very bright, so this is kind of distracting in a way. It's not helping our scene very much. So let's click on this Spaceship Segment 1, and let's click on the one below, Spaceship Segment 1A, and that's that one right down here. And we'll go to its material and click on the drop down and select Spaceship Segment here, and repeat that for all of them. So select number 2, click on here and select this one, click here, click on this drop down and select this one, click here in the material, right, material here, select this and then select this one, and just repeat that all the way down. What did I do there? Just yep, that's fine. Click on this one and then click here. So all of our segments are now filled out for the spaceship, and maybe we will probably wise to just press the letter N, and we're going to work on the back of the ship now. So let's press N and then lock to the boosters, right? Lock it to the booster, and now we can rotate around this booster and add a material to that one next. So let's go to File, Save, and then File, Save As, and let's save it as our next version, which will be version version 9. Let's save that. Okay, so let's go ahead and close down this little side control panel. So let's press the letter N on our keyboard to close that down, and we'll click on this booster on the side here, and we'll go into look dev mode at the moment. So we've just got some temporary lighting in here to just see the object, and what we'll do is rotating around this object, right? So let's click on it. Let's add its default base color or material. So let's click ship booster here. Let's click on the drop down and select the spaceship segment. So it's got its default sort of material, this sort of almost looks like a carbon fiber sort of thing going on, right? And we want to add some more materials, but we want to pick out certain parts of this booster and add more materials to them. So let's go into edit mode, and we'll go into solid view, and we'll click outside to unselect everything. Yeah, let's click outside, nothing selected. And what I want to do is carefully select some panels in here. So I'm going to click on this one here, select it, and I want to select the opposite side, this one up here. So I'm selecting both of these ones here, right? You see, top and bottom, and I'm going to roll around to this side, select this one, and select this one here, and then I'm going to move to this side here and select this one here and the one below, and then we'll go to this side here, select this one and the one below. So I'm holding down the shift key each time I select one of these, right? So make sure you hold down the shift key and carefully select them. Just make sure you're selecting the right ones, right? So this inside one here and this one here. So that should be pretty much all of them done, right? So that's all of them selected. In fact, we've got one more here to do. This one here and this one here. So that should be all of them selected. Let's move back around to the front here, and what we want to do is go into our render view. So we'll click on render view, let's go to file save, and in the materials here we're going to click new material, click the plus sign here, and you're going to see a new material here. So we've got the base material, we're going to add another material. So we're going to call this material, let's double click here, copy this spaceship booster name, and we'll click new here, and in where it says material here, we'll call it spaceship booster SEG1 segment 1 material, right, for these side panel bits here. And we're going to click on here and go to emission shader, set it to around 25, something like that, and then make it red color like this, and then click assign. Click this assign button, and now they're going to glow red. These panels inside will glow this red color. So we've got a base material on the outside, and then these specific panels will glow this particular color. So if we were to go back into object mode, we'll see that. If we go into look there, you'll see it as well, a bit clearer. You've got these sort of red colored, right? And you can increase them or decrease the values here. So we can make them glow more or make them glow less. I think around 25 sort of, let's say around 25 seems to be okay. We can adjust that later if we don't like it, right? So as the ship flies down, you're going to see these panels here on the side here. Let's set it to 25. So we want to do something similar to the back of this, because it's looking a bit plain when the ship flies past us. We want to see something on the back of this ship as well, right? So let's go back into edit mode and go back into the solid view so we can see the panels in here. And we want to hold down the shift key and select these two here. In fact, let's have a look. Yeah, we'll select these two, and we'll select the three at the bottom here. And let's just check where we are. Yep, that's fine. So we'll select these top two, these three here. We'll select these three on this side, and we'll select these three on this side. And we can assign a different color. We can assign the red one to it. I think we don't want to mix up too many colors, right? So to assign the red color, all we'll do is click here, click on this one, and then just click the assign button. And when we go into our look there or render view, we'll see that these segments now have been assigned that particular color, right? It's very simple. And what we might do, let's just click outside and go back into solid view. In fact, we'll stick in look there for now, for the minute. Just want to see, let's see, right, when this ship flies past us, let's have a look here. Really, this middle part, we want to change that color as well. I want a lot of it to be black, but this middle bit, the booster bit, where the flames or whatever is going to be coming out, if there were flames, it will be in this middle part. So let's go back into solid view, let's click on our faces, select that middle face there, and we'll try and assign some sort of material to it. I think it should be like some sort of blue booster or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but let's try and create something. In fact, let's do this in Look Dev. So that panel has been selected. You can see it's white around the edges, and we're in edit mode. Remember, edit mode, and we want to click new here for new material, and we'll just double click on the one above, click on the one below, and we'll click new here, and then paste this and call it segment 2 because it's a different segment, right? Second separate segment. And what we'll do, we've got the principal shader here, but we're going to go into our shading view, right? Shader here, and let's just get to the back control panel, this back part here, and we'll click let's go into our render view. Actually, render view, I want to create some sort of blue, sort of, I don't know, I'm just thinking blue, right? Blue's in my head, so let's make something blue. Let's click here, click outside, and then just drag this to the side a little bit, press Shift A and insert a mix shader. Let's drag that here, and you want to connect the mix shader to the bottom one here, like this, right? Connect this principal BDSS to the bottom one here, and then let's get to the top part here and add a, let's do a shader emission here, and we'll connect the emission to the top one here, and we'll set its color to some sort of blue color, something quite, I don't know how dark, let's see, something like around this sort of color, and we'll set it to 50, give it a 50 value. We might adjust that in a moment. And then we want to, let's see, we want to set the metallic all the way up, and let's set the roughness to what would be good, let's say around to 0. Let's set it to around 0.27, something like this. And the rest of the settings we're going to pretty much leave alone. And then down here in the normal, let's press Shift A and insert a bump map here, and then press Shift A and insert a texture, and we'll use a wave texture here. Let's connect the color to the height and connect the normal to the normal here. Let's go back to this render tab here and click assign up here, assign. Now it's going to assign that material to the back of this spaceship, right? This blue sort of material. It might be a bit too strong. We'll sort out the strength in a moment. Let's have a look. Maybe it's a little bit too strong. I think that's okay actually. Let's try and play around with this texture, see if we can improve it a bit. So right now we've got bands going. We really want like some sort of rings. So we'll set it to rings, and we'll set the scale to, let's say, around 25, and the distortion we'll set it to -67. Detail we'll leave it at 0, and we'll scale it all down. It's looking a bit too bright for me, so let's see. It should be a lot darker than that, I think. Let's bring down this metallic a bit. Let's set this to like 0. Let's see. Let's set the metallic to around 0. Yeah, we'll set it to around here. I'll set it actually to 0.891. Very specific. And let's see. It's kind of looking right, but I wanted it to be a lot darker than that, so let's see. I think around here is going to be okay. I think something like that. We might play around with that a little bit more afterwards. I think maybe, yeah, I think that's going to be okay. Let's go into object mode and just check it from object mode, because sometimes when you go into object mode you're going to see it a bit different. You see when we're in edit mode and in object mode we've deselected the face, and now you can see it a bit more clearly what it looks like. It kind of looks like this blue sort of, I don't know, engine booster thing going on here. So I think that's okay. So we've modeled quite a lot of this ship now. Got the booster thing at the back here. I think that's looking okay. I'm quite happy with that. And maybe maybe we'll do a little bit more afterwards, but for now I think that's pretty good. I think this red color still isn't quite right. One thing we can do is, really in this scene it's a bit hard to see the colors properly because you've got this grey background. So what you can do is go to object and go to world settings here, and sometimes just to see the colors clearer you just set it to black. You kind of get a better idea what those colors look like now, right? And you might want to tweak or change the colors slightly. You can even change it. You can see now how we can change those base colors just by changing these values here. We can make some quite dramatic changes to our render or our artwork here. So let's see. I think I might raise the value of this to like 50, something like this. You can imagine as this ship flies past, it's going to sort of glow. These panels will be glowing as it goes past at the angle. So we've still got to do the front of this ship. So maybe we'll do that next. So let's go to File, Save, and then File, Save As. And let's save it as version 10. Okay, so let's go and add some materials to the front of our ship. So let's go to object mode here. Make sure we're in object mode. Let's go to our layout and let's press the letter N on our keyboard. And then in the lock viewport, we want to lock to the front of the ship. So spaceship front. And let's middle mouse click and rotate around. And now we can see, you might have to zoom in a little bit, but you can see the front of the spaceship here. And let's press the letter N to close that. And we will go into, let's click on the front of the spaceship. So select the spaceship front, go to the material and give it the default black material, right? I like a carbon fiber sort of material thing going on here. And we want to add a few more colors because it looks a bit boring with it black like that. You can leave it like that if you want, or you can change the colors, entirely your choice. So what I think we'll do is we will go into edit mode and we'll click outside. So click once outside to unselect everything, and then go into the solid view so we can see the panels here. And I think we'll click on these two panels here. So hold down the shift key and select the outside panels by holding down the shift key and left clicking these panels here. We'll select them all and we'll create a new material. So let's select new material and let's double click on ship front here. Double click, copy this text, press Ctrl C to copy, click new here, and then press Ctrl V to paste. And let's see, I want to try one thing. Let's click here and select this yellow color. And this will be the body color of the ship, right? So we're going to assign this body color to these panels here. So if we go into our render view and then click assign here, must click assign. These ones are going to glow this sort of yellow color like the ship's body, right, at the front. So I think that looked pretty cool, and maybe the very front edge here will make them red. So let's go back into our solid view and we'll click, maybe not all of them, let's think about this. Maybe we'll select these two here, these ones here, these ones, these two here, and then finally these two here. So I want to leave like a gap, right, like this. And we want to assign a red color. So what we'll do is we need to make a new segment, right? This is ship space main. Really we should have made a separate material for it, but it's okay. I think it should be fine with that particular yellow color. But let's click new material here. Let's click ship front here, double click, copy that name. Let's click new, call it new material and call it ship front segment 1, and we'll go to the emission shader and we wanted to make it red. So let's make it red and we'll give it a value of 5 and then click assign and then go to the render view. Now we can see the front part is red like this. Sometimes it's worth turning off the overlays so you can just see the ship without the overlays like this. And I think this is going to be pretty good. I think, and we're going to fly past this, right, at an angle, so we're going to see the glow and all that good stuff. Maybe we can tone down this glow effect afterwards, but for now I think that's pretty good. So let's go to File, Save As. and save this as version 11. Okay, so I think the next thing to do, which will be wise, is to take all of our ship components and put them into a single collection. A bit like a layering, like a grouping sort of Photoshop, right? You can create groups in Photoshop with your layers. So we want to take all of the objects that we used to create this ship and put them into its own collection. So let's right click up here, scene collection, right click and click new, and down here it says collection 2. Let's double click and call it, let's just call it spaceship, right? Spaceship. And then we'll click on the empty and hold down the shift key and select all of these objects. Select them all and then just drag them into this spaceship collection here. And then we can minimize that, and then all of our assets for our spaceship sit in here. The camera sits outside, and then we've got another collection here which just contains the camera at the moment, right? So that way we can go and create our land, because we wanted to create some land in this scene. So let's look in look dev view, and let's turn back on our overlays so we can see the floor and stuff like this. We need to see that as well. So the advantage of putting this in a collection is we can just hide the ship without having to hide each individual component. That's why I've put it into a collection, because we're going to build this land, and while we're building this land, really we don't need to see the ship. So I think for now we'll go to File, Save, and we'll move on to build this land and see how we can create this land for our scene. Okay, so sometimes you need to be a bit careful. At the moment we're in edit mode, so we don't want to be in edit mode when we start to create this land. So let's go into object mode. Make sure you're in object mode here. Always make sure you're in object mode when you're going to add more sort of materials or assets or anything to your scene, so you don't assign it to this particular object. We want to hide the ship, so we put it into this collection so we can easily hide it. And what we will do is press the letter N to open up our control panel here, and we want to delete this ship front lock to viewport. So we want to lock to this particular view here. So let's press the letter N, and we'll press Shift A and insert a plane. So we've got this plane here, literally it's just a plane, and we want to change its dimensions. So we want to set the dimensions. Let's click here on the X scale. We're going to set it to 175, and then on the Y scale we're going to set it to 120, let's say 130. So we've got quite a big piece of land here, right? Quite wide like this. And let's just work in solid view at the moment. Solid view here. And what we want to do is go into edit mode, and the land is already selected. If it's not, press the letter A once and it will go all orange. Let's right click and subdivide it by 10 like this. So we get these 10 segments, and then go back into object mode and go over to the add modifier, and we're going to subdivide it again by 3. So let's set it to 3 here and set it to 3 here, and then click OK. So when we go back into edit mode, you'll see there's a lot more segments here. You can see all of these different segments, right? And what we want to do is create some land. So to do that, we want to click on the vertices selection tool here, and make sure you click outside of the land. Then press number 7 to get into the top view, so you can see it from the top. And we want to just randomly select some vertices on this land here, right? So let's just click on them. In fact, let's think about this a little bit. What we want to do, let's click around here. Don't click too far at the top, so click somewhere around here. Let me go into wireframe. You'll be able to see it a lot easier what I'm clicking. So I'm clicking around here and not too close to this top edge, because I want to do something else thereafter. So let's just click around here down the side. This one we don't want to click. So if you click on something, just click back on it if you don't want that particular vertex to be selected. And you can see I'm being a bit random here, which is the objective. Something like this should be pretty good. Let's say something like this, and we're going to middle mouse click and rotate at an angle like this. Let's just zoom in a little bit, and we'll click on proportional editing and click down here and select random, and then we're going to press G to grab and then Z. In fact, move your mouse cursor around here somewhere, then press G to grab them, and then Z to lock them on the Z axis, and then start to rotate your mouse wheel downwards in this downwards. In fact, the best way to do this, to be fair, press escape and then go into solid view, because you'll be able to see things a lot clearer. In wireframe you won't see it so clearly. So if you're in solid view now, and then press G to grab and then Z, and then you can start to build these sort of, you can call them mountains, you can call them hills, whatever you like. And as you rotate your mouse wheel up or down, it's going to increase or decrease these hills, right? We want something to be not too high, something like around here should be good. So yeah, something like that. Can you see they're quite flat? They're not too raised too high, because our ship's going to fly over them. So something like this should be good. And let's press number 7 again. So we go back into the top view. You can see the vertices that are already selected. We want to select some at the back here. So let's go into our wireframe again, and we'll press we'll click outside to unselect everything, and we're going to click only across the top here, like this, something like this, and then we'll middle mouse click again, and we've got our proportional editing and random already selected, and we're going to grow some sort of mountains in the background here. So let's press G to grab. In fact, let's do the same thing. Let's go into solid view first, and let's just zoom in here a little bit and press so if you're in wireframe and you press G to grab and you want to undo that, just press the escape key, right? That will just undo that. So let's press solid view, then press G to grab, then Z, and we'll grow these out. And then let's see what we're doing wrong here. We need to select proportional editing, make sure that's turned on, yeah? Then press G to grab, then Z, and then we can grow these mountains. And they're random, right? They're kind of sort of random shaped. So something like this should be pretty good. Something like this. So we've got these flat hills, and then we've got these mountains in the background, like this. Okay, let's go back into object mode here, and let's press number 7 to get into the top view. And what we want to do now is let's see, really we should have built some down the bottom here as well, so we need to fix that. Let's go back into edit mode, and we need a few sort of hills down here as well. So we'll go into our wireframe, and let's select, we could probably do this in solid view, will be wiser because we can see where our other hills are. And let's just randomly select a few here, a few vertices, something like this, and we'll middle mouse click. You can see them clearly now, and we've got random still selected. Proportional editing is turned on, and we'll press G to grab and then press Z, and we can raise these, and we want to roll our mouse wheel upwards, right? We don't want these ones to be too big. Something like this should be good. I think this should be good. So let's left click to confirm that. Let's go back into object mode, press number 7, and let's zoom out a little bit here, like this. And what we would do is we want to duplicate this, so press Shift and D to duplicate, Shift D, and hit enter. And then let's go to our object data here, and on the let's see, on the Z rotation, we want to rotate 180 degrees, and then we're going to hold the control key and drag this back so it sits like this. Maybe we should overlap them slightly like this. So we're going to overlap, so we've got a nice straight line down the side, maybe a little bit more, something like this. And let's see how that looks. That's looking pretty good. And the one thing we want to do is when we overlap, let's click on this one here, the one on the left or the one on the right, and we want to on the Z location here, we just want to increase it by 0.01, just so that they're not overlapping exactly on the same plane. That may or may not be an issue, but I think we should do that anyway. So I think that's going to look pretty good. I think that should be fine. Now we want to assign a material. to this land. So let's see what we'll do. Let's think about this. Okay, so what we'll do is go into our render view. So we can see it in render view, and let's click on this plane. Let's call this land 1, and let's call the other one land 2. Let's click on land 1, or let's click on, in fact, land 2 because it's closer to us. Doesn't matter which one really. And we'll go to the material. Let's click new material, and we want to create some land here, right? So let's name this land. Let's just call it land. Land should be fine. And we want to make it really dark. Let's just bring this down to quite a dark shade. We may even make it darker than this, I'm not sure yet. And the metallic we're going to leave off, and the roughness we're going to set it to, let's see, something like 0.28, something like this. And now what we want to do is really add a texture to this land, because at the moment it's not looking the best, is it? So let's go into our shader, and let's go to the object data so we can see this land here, and let's go into our render view. And what we should do is really click on land 1 as well, click on the drop down and select the land here. So both of them, both land 1 and 2 are using the same material now, so we'll be able to see that a bit easier, right? See what's going on in here. And let's see, let's zoom out a little bit. So here's the land that we're working on right now. Let's get to the hill parts, something like this. And we'll press Shift A and insert. In fact, let's get to the bottom of here. We need to connect to the normal here. Press Shift A and insert a bump map. So bump and then Shift A texture, and we're going to use a wave texture. So let's connect the color to the height and connect the normal to the normal here. And in the scale, we'll set it to around 30, let's set it to 39, something like 39. You get this sort of pattern. And then the distortion, we'll set it to -26. So you see it's something like this. The detail we'll leave as it is. And then the detail scale, we'll set it to 10.4. 10.4. You're going to get this rough sort of texture, land sort of texture now. This sort of volcano type sort of land here, and it's going to look pretty cool once we add some more lighting and stuff like that to it. Let's go back to our layout, and you kind of see what it looks like in here. We're going to fly over this land afterwards, right? So let's go to File, Save As, and let's save this as version 12. Okay, so I think the wise thing for us to do is to sort out the position of our camera, because that's going to help us when we create our lighting. So let's go ahead and click on the camera here and click on the object data, and we want to move our camera back. So let's set it to around -290. That will bring the camera towards the front of this plane here on this side of the object, and we want to set the Z location to around 10, and then set the rotation here on the X to around 80, and then the X and Y here and all the other values we leave as their default 00, right? So if we move to the viewport here and press 0, we can see roughly what the camera sees. So this orange box represents what the camera is going to see, and it's looking into the scene like this at the moment, right? So this should be okay, but I think we might try and move the camera a little bit. If you move it too far backwards, you're going to go into the mountains here. So if you see some strange thing like this, that means you're too far back. So just try and move the camera forward a little bit until you can see your scene like this. Really the camera might end up like sitting inside these mountains. That's why it might get a little confusing for you. Remember, your design is slightly different to mine, so your camera position may need to be brought a little bit forward. So all you do is just move it on this y-axis or this y location to get it just right, and then we might bring it down a bit more, bring it forward a little bit. I want to fly quite low to the floor and maybe swerve around some of these hills or these little mounds, and then we'll have our spaceship fly past us as well. Let's go to File, Save As, and we'll save this as version 13. Let's click save here. And next thing we want to do is add some lighting, right? So let's go ahead and press Shift A, and we want to insert a spotlight. So we've got a spotlight here. Let's press number 3. That will take us into the right orthographic. And we're going to grab that spotlight, drag it to here, and then drag it up so that it sits behind the mountains here. And then we want to rotate it on the x-axis so that it's facing the camera at roughly around 85, right? Minus 85. So set it to minus 85 degrees, and then we can adjust it. If we just have a look, we can see that that spotlight is really going to be hitting some of this stuff here. So we want to move it to the left or right behind these mountains. Somewhere around here should be good. We're going to do something in Blender. I'm not sure if you're supposed to be doing this in Blender, but kind of gave a nice effect when I started to experiment with some lights, and we'll see if it works today. It should work, but I don't know if it's a bug in Blender or if it's meant to be intentional, but we'll find out soon. So what we want to do actually is go into our render view. Not actually, we'll go into our shading view here, shader, and we want to make sure world, select the world settings here, and we just want to add let's see, let's go into our world settings, and let's just press Shift A here and insert a volume scatter and connect the volume to the volume here on the world node here on the output, and then set the density to 0.015 and then set this setting here to 0.8, something like this. Let's go into our render view so we can see now we've kind of got this sort of hazy business going on, right? This sort of hazy effect. It's not quite what we want. We want something a bit better than that. What we would do is go to the spotlight and set it to 300 value. Give it a value of 300 for the spotlight, and then change its color to sort of a red sort of color, something like red. And then let's click on the sun here, sun. Now you can see it's made a dramatic change. We've got this sunlight with this strength set to 300. Now what I find is if you add a sunlight as default and then try and set it to 300, it just won't let you do that. It will max out at 10, so that's the maximum value. But if you add a spotlight first, give it 300, and then switch it to a sunlight, you can make that value anything you want. So I'm going to set it to 300 because I want it to be quite blown out in terms of these mountains and this haze like this. Something like this. We might tweak and change it a little bit. We might change the colors here slightly. Let's see, something like around maybe about 0.19, something like this. Something like this. And we might tone this down a little bit, but the specular we want to set it to around 0.43, and the angle we're going to set to 0. Now if we press number 3 on our keyboard, that takes us back into the right orthographic, and what we want to do, in fact the sunlight is pointing at the right direction, so we don't actually need to do anything with the sunlight. But what we want to do, let's see, we want to improve this a little bit, right? So the way that we're going to improve it is click here. So we're in the world view, world nodes, click on this here, and we're going to drag down here until it gets pretty dark, not too dark, somewhere around here. Now you're going to get this sort of nice sort of glow effect, right? White in the middle, and it's going to sort of glow out. And we might actually grab our spotlight here and press let's press G to grab and then Z to lock it on the Z axis, and we should be able to move it up and down, but it might be a little tricky from here. So let's press number 3 and let's go into our layout view, and let's press number 3 here actually. Let's just drag it up slightly to around here, and let's press 0. So something like this is what we want, but you can see the ground doesn't look too great. So what we'll do is go to the land, click on its material, and we're going to set the metallic up quite high to something like this sort of value, and we're getting a bit closer to what we want. So we've got this sort of rocky sort of surface. It's not quite right yet, so let's play around with a few more settings to see if we can get this perfect. I think in the shader here, maybe let's press 0 to see the camera view. Let's try and darken this down a bit more. You can brighten it up. In fact, maybe we need to make this a bit brighter, to not too bright, something like this. Let's increase this value. Let's set it to, let's see, set it to 0.339. I'm going to set it to 0.339 here on this value here for the grayscale, right? That's really what we want, but we want to change the land material slightly. Let's click on that and let's just try and let's see, we want to bring down his roughness a bit. I think something like this. If we go to layout, we'll be able to see it a bit clearer. And let's turn off our overlays. So we've got these mountains in the background and we've got this ground here. We need to tweak this slightly. I think we need that metallic up because it's not looking. Let's try and change our specular. I don't think that's going to make much difference. Let's set that to 0 anyway. And it's the roughness. I mean, you could have it like this, but I kind of want a bit of roughness in there to pick up some of this lighting as we fly across. Let's just click on our camera. Let's go to our camera settings here. Let's just move across and see what it's going to look like. Yeah, I don't want it to be shining so much. So let's see. Let's click on the spotlight. Somewhere around here should be good, about 0.34. And then on the land, let's just make sure if we bring our metallic all the way down, set the metallic to 0. Let's just go to File, Save. Let's see. We're going to need some metallic. We need some shine on there to pick up the lighting, right? So I think around here should be good. So I'll set it to 0.313 and 0.192 here to give it some roughness, but I don't want it to be too much. Something like this I think might work for us. So you can imagine as we're flying across, you're going to pick up some of that lighting, but not a lot of it, right? So really now we just need to sort of animate our ship flying and animate the camera going across this scene. So let's go to File, Save As, and save it as version 14. And then we can tweak this land and we can tweak the lights and we can do some other changes to this if we don't quite like what we're seeing. So we can play around with the settings. I won't worry about it too much. Really, we should try and bring our camera back to a start position. So let's bring it back to a start position around here. And one thing we need to do is we need to group our objects for our spaceship here. So let's hide the land and let's just hide this spotlight for the minute and go into our look dev view. So select look dev. So we've got some temporary lighting and then we can turn back on our spaceship. So we can see our spaceship here. And what we want to do, let's turn on our overlays. Let's go to look dev and turn on overlays here. Okay. So really what we want to do is group all of these assets for this spaceship into one object that we can move in our scene. So to do that, let's open up the this collection here of this spaceship, and we want to turn on the empty at the moment. So let's enable it and let's try and find that empty. Let's click on it. It's at the front and we want the empty to be at the back. So let's press number 7 and let's grab that empty, hold down the control key and drag the empty so it sits at the back. You can use your let's go into solid view and then you can use the X-ray to see where that empty is positioned, and we want to position it right at the back here, right here. We can be a little bit forward, a little bit back, it doesn't really matter too much, but we want the empty to be towards the back because the empty is going to be used to control the movement of this spaceship, right? So let's let's turn off our X-ray, and let's just middle mouse click. And what we will do is we want to select all of these objects, but select the empty last. So let's click on this bottom one, hold down the shift key and start to select all of them. Make sure you're selecting all of them and make sure you select the empty as the very last object. You'll see it has a slightly different blue icon highlight in there. Must be the last one selected, yeah? Very important. And then move to the viewport, move your mouse cursor here and press Ctrl and P and then select object here. Now what that's done is we can now use the empty to basically move our spaceship, right? So if we were to click in this drop down and click on the rocket booster, for example, that will move on its own. You can see we can move that on its own, right? Let's press Ctrl Z to undo that. But if we click on the empty, because we parented all these objects, you can see they're indented underneath the empty. Because we parented all these objects to that particular empty, we can now move that whole object using, or the whole spaceship using the empty itself, right? If that makes sense. Hopefully it makes sense. So really what we want to do now is turn back on our spotlight, turn back on our land, and you can see the ship is buried in the land. So let's just drag it up a little bit so it's above the surface. Let's press 0 on our keyboard, 0, so we can see what the camera sees. And we want to, let's click on our empty and drag the spaceship to the side over here a bit, right? And when we go back into our render view, the spaceship, you won't really see it. So let's click on something like let's minimize this empty here. We'll click on, let's say, the camera. What's highlighted in here? Let's turn off our overlays. So this is the spaceship here, and it's going to get blown out by this sunlight, and we kind of want that effect. And as we fly forward, this spaceship's going to kind of come into focus. You can think of it that way, yeah? And we might even move it towards the center a bit. So let's click on the empty, and let's drag it so that it's almost centered out here, so you can barely see it. You won't really be able to see it. Let's just middle mouse click, and in fact what we're going to do, we actually need to rotate this around. You can see the spaceship's facing in the wrong way. So let's press number 7, and we're going to rotate it 360 because we want the spaceship to fly in this direction. Well, 180 we want to rotate it. So let's go to the object data, and on the Z axis we should be able to type in 180, and now it's facing in the right direction. Let's zoom right out and drag our spaceship so it sits behind the mountains, right? So let's press 0 now, and now we won't be able to see that spaceship at all, and we're going to animate our camera, move through the scene, and as we get to a certain point the spaceship will fly by us. So let's try and do that now. So our camera is quite low, which I don't mind, but I think we should really move it up slightly. Let's click on the camera, and I think it would be wise for us to move it up a little bit so we can fly over these sort of little hills and stuff. And maybe we'll move it to the X location. Let's move it to the side a little bit so we've got a clearer path in front of us. Something, let's do that to about -5, something like this. And let's set this to 12. And our start point will be -290. In my case, these are my values, but your ones might be slightly different, yeah? Let's just check one thing. Okay. So what we'll do is, let's go to File, Save As, and let's save this as. I like to save many versions of my work. So whenever I want to come back to a certain part of this project, I can step in at a certain part and redo some work on it. Maybe change the land, but keep the ship and do things that way around, right? So let's click on the camera. Let's click on the record button. And we want to set this to, let's see, how many frames? Let's work out the frames. Let's set it to around 600 for now, 600 frames. And we'll click on our output settings here. And we'll set it to 30 frames a second, 30 frames. Let's click back on the object data for this camera. And we've got the record button on at the moment. And we're going to press the letter I on the location and the letter I on the rotation, because we want to insert some keyframes for the rotation and the location. So let's go to frame 60 and we'll press the letter I here and the letter I here as well. And then let's see, we'll go to probably around frame Let's see how far we want to go. Let's go to about frame 130. Let's press the letter I here and the letter I here. And for now, I think that's going to be okay. So we want to get to a certain point in our scene. In fact, let's go to let's go a little bit more forward. Let's go to around frame 180. Let's say it's around frame 180. Let's press the letter I here and the letter I here. So we're inserting keyframes. This orange bar represents that we haven't actually moved the camera. All we've done is tell Blender to insert keyframes. And I kind of like to set up my keyframes basic like this first, and we can change them afterwards. But now we can easily lock our location and rotation for each one of these keyframes. Now we can move the camera. So let's go to frame 1. And on frame 1, what we're going to do is, let's see, we're going to actually, on frame 1, we're going to move the camera forward a bit. So let's see, we want to move the camera to maybe around, let's see, okay, we don't want to move it that far. So let's see, on frame 60 we're at 290, right? 290 minus 290 here. So on frame 1 we want to be at around minus 290, so let's call it around 270, around 270, give or take. So really the first thing our camera is going to do is move backwards, not forwards. It's going to actually move in the backwards direction. So let's go to frame 1 and we will set the rotation on the y-axis to around 45 degrees like this. So it's actually going to be showing at an angle when we start the first part, so it's going to slide backwards at an angle like this. So let's go ahead and click File, Save. Okay, so we've got the first part of the camera animation done, this first part here. Let's move all the way down to frame 130 where we put our next keyframe. And really we want to move the camera forward now. So the quick way to do that is press number 7 on your keyboard, because that will allow us to, let's make sure the camera is selected, and then make sure you're on keyframe 130, make sure the record button is on, and then press number 7. You can see where the camera is now in relationship to the scene, and we're just going to move the camera forward. So let's just move it forward, or you can just click this green arrow actually and just drag it forward, and we want it to be roughly just before like the halfway. Can you imagine this is the halfway point? So we want it to be before that halfway point, somewhere around here roughly. So if we click press 0, that shows us the camera view, and maybe we'll, let's see, let's try and move it forward a little bit more, maybe to around here. So I'm setting it to, let's set it to around 120. Let's see what's in front of us. Yeah, let's set it to around, let's bring it back a bit, maybe it's back to 180. 180. So your one might be different, doesn't matter, but I'm saying it's around 180. In fact, I want to bring it more forward than that. Let's set it to around 140, around 140, minus 140 here, minus 140, and then press 0, and we can see roughly where the camera is now. I think I just want to move it just in front of this rock here, about here. Mine's about minus 123, and I want to rotate the camera slightly, so that'll be on the y-axis, right? I'm going to rotate it maybe a small amount, maybe about 20 degrees. So now our camera will fly backwards and then rotate forwards in this sort of angle, like this, something like this. And then we're going to get to frame 180. You can see the camera moves backwards. So we're on 123, right? So here we want to move the camera forward again. So we're going to move it, let's say we move it, I think this is a bit too far forward. Let's bring it back a bit to about 160, somewhere around here. and then on frame 180 we're going to move it to a minus 180 like this. Where is it? 160. So 160 will actually move it to 100 minus 140. It's moving forwards. Maybe we'll move it just in front of this rock here, somewhere around here. Let's have a look. Sometimes worth just clicking the play button, you can see roughly what's going on here. Okay, that should be okay for now. We can tweak this and adjust it accordingly. So from here to our next step will be, let's see, that smooths out like this. And really we want our ship to start appearing from around this point. So if we press number 7, we can see our camera is roughly in the middle, like on the height, on this plane here. It's roughly around the middle, and we want to start moving this ship forward. So let's click on the empty. This is the empty for the ship, and we want to just remember keyframe 180. That's what we've got to remember. In fact, what we can do is just press the letter I here. So make sure the record button is on. Move over to here and press letter I and letter I here. Then move all the way back to the first keyframe and press the letter I here and the letter I here. And then I reckon around 180, sorry, on frame 80, press the letter I and the letter I. So between 0 and 80, this spaceship won't move. But on 80 to 180, we want to move the spaceship forward. So let's drag it with the green arrow and let's bring it forward to about here. This is not too far away from where our camera is, right? Let's press 0 and we can see it's gone past the camera. So let's bring it back a little bit to about here, somewhere sort of like this sort of position. And really what we want to do now, let's have a little think about this. What we'll do, we really want to move our camera up a little bit, yeah, and to the left a little bit and bring it up a bit more. So let's click on the camera and let's shift it to the side a bit more and let's raise it up a bit. I want it to be like around here. I want the camera to, I want the spaceship to kind of fly halfway. If I zoom out a little bit, this is our window, our frame, right? So we want the camera to, we want the spaceship to be flying around halfway point. So here's pretty good, around 14. And what we'll do is let's keep moving this ship, right? So let's see. So we're on, let's go to, let's click on our camera. In fact, let's click on the empty, the spaceship, and let's move to frame, around frame 340. It's about this sort of distance, quite a lot. And we'll insert a keyframe here, and we'll insert a keyframe here, and we'll move the ship forward a bit more. Let's move it to, let's just move it past the camera, and then let's go back here to frame 180 and let's click on the camera itself, and we want to kind of have the camera almost sort of track that. So let's see, let's go to frame, let's have a look here. So I reckon probably 180, let's see, zoom out a little bit here. So let's have a look. So the camera's going to get to around here on 180. And then on between 180 and 280, So let's move to frame 280, which is here. We want the camera to kind of rotate around a little bit. So let's click on the camera itself. Let's press I to insert a keyframe here and here, and we'll rotate it on the z-axis. Let's say we rotate it around roughly about -13, something like this. And we might move the camera a little bit in this sort of downwards direction. So let's see how that works, because our ship might be flying past a bit too quick. Yeah, I think the ship is moving a bit too fast. Let's have a look here. Let's go to frame 280. Maybe we can do something with that. Let's see. I reckon we've got to move the camera out more, because we need to see more of this ship as it flies by. And let's rotate it a bit more here. And let's increase our rotation. Let's see. Let's rotate it to around here. It's probably too much. Okay, let's click on the spaceship, the empty, and let's go to its keyframe on 340. And it's moved too far forward, so let's bring it back a bit to around here. So that way when our camera rotates we can still see the spaceship, right, flying past, because we're moving it too far forward. That's the problem. So let's go back to our camera, and this is down to your own choices, right? This is not like a set rule or anything. I'm just trying to get the keyframes to work nicely for us. We'll move to like frame 340 here on our camera. Let's move to about frame 340. You can use this button here to move the frames as well. And we want to spin this around. So we're looking at our ship from this direction. Something like this. And by the time it gets here, really this ship should have moved forward a lot more, right? So let's click on the spaceship. And on frame 340, let's move it forward 1 minute. That's the camera. Let's take this empty and let's move it forward this way to about here, and let's see how that plays out. So our camera's swerve isn't quick enough. You can see the ship's moved past before our camera rotates. So probably what we need to do, let's go to our camera. Let's see here. I think up to like 180 we're good here, right? So here on this keyframe on the camera, we're gonna have to rotate it more. Let's see. Let's try and rotate it to around here. Yeah, that's much better. Right? Let's just play it from the beginning. See what it looks like before we finish this off. Okay, I'm quite happy with that for the minute. What we would do is let's zoom out on our timeline, because we're going to work with these end keyframes now. So let's see. Let's click on our empty, which is the ship. Let's just zoom our viewport out a little bit so we can see around the sides here. And let's click on the empty. Let's just see. So I reckon by frame 430, we're going to want to move our ship more forward. Not by a lot though. Let's see. So let's move the ship a bit more forward. Let me just click play here. And then by the time it gets to frame 600, let's press the letter I here and the letter I here, and we'll move our ship even further forward. Let's just make sure it's not, it should be fine. Let's press number 7. You can see it's actually going into the mountain, so let's bring that back a bit so it doesn't hit the mountain, somewhere around here like this, because by the time it's done all of that, our camera would have spun all the way back around again. So let's move back here and let's click on our camera, and between this frame here, where are we, frame 340, so on frame 430, so about 100 frames after, we want to move the position of our camera. So what we want to do is try and move to the, like, behind this this ship, right? So let's move the camera. Let's see, let's rotate it around to around here. Let's move it on the X location to something like this. We might even move it back a little bit to around here. Let's see. Okay, I think that's fine. And then let's move to frame, let's see, let's move to around frame 520, and on frame 520 we want to rotate our camera all the way back around to minus 360, so we're looking back at the sunlight, and then we will move to frame 300, or sorry, frame 600. Let's go to frame 600. Let's press the letter I here and the letter I here, and we're going to move our camera forward, and maybe we'll rotate it again on the y-axis, something like this. Maybe we'll move it up slightly, somewhere like here. So let's untick the record button. Let's go back to the first frame and click play, and then we might tweak this a little bit to see if we can improve it in any way. Okay, so there's a few problems there. On this keyframe, our Y rotation is being used, right? So up until here, we're good. So on this keyframe here, 340, we need to set the Y rotation. Let's go to 340. We need to set this Y rotation to 0. And set it here to 0 as well on 4. You could have it at an angle, but I think it's better to leave it on 0 rotation here. We have to hit the record button, yeah? So if you don't hit the record button, it's not going to accept those changes. So here on 340, keyframe 340, set the Y to 0. You can click this button here to move to the next keyframe straight away. Set that to 0 as well on the Y, and then move to this keyframe here. Let's see how that looks at the end. Yeah, let's set that to let's go back a keyframe here, set that Y rotation to 0 as well. And I think this the camera is moving upwards, right? I don't like that upwards movement, so let's see. If we go to this keyframe, let's go to this one here. On this keyframe, the Z-axis is at 14. So on the next keyframe, we'll leave the Z-axis at 14. And then on the next keyframe, we want the Z-axis, let's see. On this keyframe, let's set it to 14. It might be a bit low. That's okay actually. So I think that's going to be okay. Let's see where this is, 520. Okay. So I think we're almost done, right? There's a couple of things we need to do. Let's try and sort out this floor a little bit, because when we rotate the camera, although it looks pretty good from this side, as we rotate it around, see it's not looking quite right in this scene here. So let's try and tweak that a little bit. There's a couple of things we want to do as well, like add a camera blur at the beginning and at the end. We'll sort that out in a moment. So let's go to File, Save As, and save it as version 16. Let's just save that here. Okay, so I think most of this is looking pretty good, but what I don't really like is, let's just press 0. When the camera, let's get zoomed in here. So when the camera rotates around to the other direction, let's just move our mouse across here. Okay, so as we run through these frames, everything looks good up to here, but when it rotates around here, this background is looking a bit rubbish to me. I don't like this. So, but I do like this, right, with the white light and everything. It looks pretty good. So I think what we'll do is we'll duplicate our spotlight, place it onto the other side of the mountain behind us, and then we should get this similar sort of effect with like this sort of shading and stuff going on when the camera looks in the opposite direction. So let's go to frame 60. Frame 60. Our camera's nice and straight here. We can press number 3 on our keyboard. That will take us into the right orthographic. Let's zoom out a little bit and click on this spotlight, this one here, and press Shift and D to duplicate it. So we've got 2 spotlights now, and we want to grab spotlight. Let's call this spotlight front, and let's call this other one spotlight or spot back. Yeah. So the back one, we just want to grab it and drag it to the opposite side over here. Because when our camera rotates, it's going to see this spotlight, and we might even change its color so it looks a bit different. So this spotlight here, we want to rotate it now because the sunlight is pointing in the wrong direction. So let's go to the camera settings, and it's set to -85 at the moment, and we want to set it to +85. Now you can see the little dot has switched sides, and we'll move it back a bit more. So it sits behind this mountain. Let's middle mouse click and rotate around, and let's go into our solid view, and we can just position this spotlight so that it sits in between the mountains here, right? So if we press 0 now and go back into our render view, as we scrub through this, now we're going to see that spotlight in the background there. So spotlight number 2, we can click on it, and maybe we can change its color a little bit, right? Let's see, it's pretty powerful, so we might have to reduce its power. Let's set it to something like 150. Let's leave it at 300. And I don't think the color change is helping us, right? So let's leave it kind of where it was before. We set to around -0.19, I believe. Let's see, 0.19 here. So the other spotlight, we'll set that to 0.19, and then we're going to get some consistency when we rotate around, and I think it looks a lot better now. kind of looks like the spaceship's flying into something into the distance. You can still see the mountains on the side here as well. I think that looks a bit better. The only thing I don't like is in this camera action. Let's move forward here. So we get to around here, and all of this is okay, but it does some slight move to the side here. So let's look at that. I mean, you don't have to change it, but let's go to the camera object data. Let's see what's happening between these two frames here, because this looks all good. It's this bit here. So I think on this sort of frame here, we really need to move our camera a bit closer maybe. Let's see. Or maybe that's not a wise move. Let's see, on frame 280, the X is set to minus 12.12. So let's move to the next keyframe and set that to minus 12.12. And then let's move to the next keyframe and let's see. Okay, we screwed up our keyframes here a little bit. We've actually added another keyframe at 341. So I need to right click on that and delete it. Let's see. I think actually that's looking better. Actually, let's play it from here. Yeah, I think that's fine. So you can play around with the camera and just get it to how you like it. You can also click on this land here. Let's go to the land material and let's see if we can improve that a little bit. I might max out the metallic and then bring down its roughness a bit. Let's say to around here. You could completely smooth it out like this, but I'm going to tweak the roughness a bit just so we've got these little dots on the landscape. Let's just see what that looks like. That's not right, so let's increase the roughness a bit more. Okay, I don't think that's too bad. Let's just go to our bloom settings and let's just see. I think that's okay. Let's go into our shading. In here we might make this a bit darker. Just want to have a bit more contrast here. I think this is going to look better, but we need to tweak our land material again. So let's see. Let's reduce its roughness or increase its roughness to about here. I think this looks better. That's not too bad, is it? So honestly, you can play around with these settings forever to get it perfect, but today let's untick this record button. I think we're going to have to settle for something like this before we do our final render, and we can tweak. You can play around with the settings as well. You can change this metallic and see what looks right for you. This is like the specular, right? So the shine, and just get it right. somewhere around here I think might be good. Let's see. So I think about here is going to be good enough. I'm going to play it one more time and just see if I'm happy with that. I think that looks pretty good. And you can go around and play around with these settings, change the land, change the light sources. There's a lot of stuff that you can do in here, right? You can experiment with it now. You've got a good sort of setup. So I think we'll render this out and see what it looks like. It'd be interesting to see what it looks like after it's rendered. I think we're good to go. So let's go and file, save. Let's just do a file save as and save it as version 17. So when we come back and load it, if we change anything in version 17 we don't like, we've got our original version 16 from before. It's probably one thing that I've missed out here is on this empty. So when this let's see, around here on frame, let's hit the record button. So let's see. Really what I wanted to do was rotate maybe let's say between on frame 480. So let's go to frame 340 and let's go to the empty, let's go to the object data, let's press I and I here, and then let's go to one keyframe forward and press I and I here to insert keyframes for these location and rotation. I want to rotate this object slightly just by a few degrees, so we'll rotate this just a few degrees here, so that way when the camera flies past we can see this object, our spaceship sort of rotating, so it just adds a bit more, make it a bit more dynamic. We could even rotate it probably a little bit more. Let's see, around to around here. Let's have a look at that. So I think that's okay. As this object's flying forward to us, we can also rotate this whole back piece here. So that would be inside the empty, and that would be the spaceship booster, right? So let's just work out where we would want to rotate at what point. So if we click on the empty, we can go to, in fact, we should probably go to frame, let's see, let's go to frame 0 and click on the spaceship booster, and the record button is on. So let's press the letter I here and the letter I here. So the keyframes are set for the first frame and that booster won't do anything. So when it gets to around, I reckon around 100 and let's say frame 200. On frame 200 we'll press the letter I and press the letter I here, and then we'll move forward to around just before it starts to rotate here, right? It's probably on frame 340 if I remember correctly. So on frame 340 let's press the letter I here and the letter I here, and then this booster has been selected, right, the spaceship booster. So we can rotate that, and let's rotate that maybe let's do 180 degrees. So as it's flying forward we'll see this rotate, and then the whole ship will rotate, which I think is pretty cool. Don't know what you think. And maybe at around frame, let's see, at around frame 150, let's say it to frame 150, we can just about see this, the front of the ship here, right, on frame 150. So let's go to the front ship here, that component. Let's press the letter I here and the letter I here. Let's go back to the first frame and press the letter I and the letter I to insert keyframes for this. So when it gets to around, let's see, around here, just when it's gone past, let's say around frame 200. Frame 200, we'll press the letter I and the letter I. So for the front ship, maybe we'll rotate that 360. That might be overkill, but we'll see. 360 degrees. So let's go back. Let's see, let's play it from here. think that's okay. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. Okay, so the last thing we want to do is go back to the first frame. Let's go to frame 1. Let's turn off the record button for the second. Let's go to File, Save As, and save this as version 18. Done a lot of versions today. And let's click on the camera. Let's go to the camera settings here, and let's turn on the record button. And what we want to do is turn on depth of field, and on the focus here we're going to press the letter I. So we'll press letter I here, that inserts a keyframe, and by frame, let's see, on frame 50, let's see, probably around, yeah, let's say around frame, let's move back a few here, so 36, that's about 2.5 seconds, right? So on this frame here, 80, we'll press the letter I, and then by the time it gets to frame 130, we're going to press the letter I here as well. And let's go back to the first keyframe for this particular focus distance, and we're going to set that to, let's see, let's make it right, let's set it to 0.2. It's going to be like blurred out like this, so when we play it's going to show focus and then move forward through the scene like this. I want this kind of blur at the beginning, and maybe that blur, let's see, maybe what we'll do is let's go to, so this is the first keyframe, let's skip to this keyframe here, 60, and let's set the camera blur to around 0.66. So it'll still be blurred out a little bit. And let's pause this, go to the first keyframe and play it. So all of this is going to be a bit blurred, and then as it moves forward it's going to gain focus. We'll see our spaceship fly past. It's all doing its rotating, doing its good stuff. And have a nice look at it. It flies off into the distance, and our camera will rotate back around and get to the end here. And when it gets to the end here, we want to go to frame, let's see, let's go back a keyframe, frame 520. We'll press the letter I on the focus distance, and then go to frame 600, press that as well, and set that again to 0.44. So that will kind of get blurred out at the end now, right? At the very end it will blur out. Maybe we can blur it a bit more, let's see. Maybe around 0.22. It's quite blurred out now. And I think we're done. That's pretty much a job done. So I want to render this out and see what it looks like, because what you see in the viewport is not necessarily what the final render will look like. The final render should be a lot sharper, a lot cleaner, should look a lot better, but we won't know that until we actually go ahead and render it all out. So let's go back to the first frame. Let's go to File, Save. Let's just save this, and let's go to our render settings. We'll set the render to 128 samples, and we can leave the viewport at 16, doesn't really matter. And inside the volumetrics we should set this to 4. 4 should be fine. Normally we'll set it to 2, but I think 4 should be fine for this, and we can leave it at 64 samples, should be okay. Let's go to the output settings, and it's on 30 frames. Let's click on this PNG and set it to AVI JPEG, and let's click the open folder, and we'll find that folder on my desktop, and we'll just click accept here, and we'll press Ctrl S to save, and then Ctrl and F12 to render. So now we've got to wait for Blender to go and render out all of these frames. That's going to take quite some time. There's a lot of things going on in this scene. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video, and we'll come back and watch the video once it's finally rendered, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to look good. Okay, so Blender's finished rendering out all of the 600 frames here, and we'll close this down and we'll go to File and Save. Let's minimize this and check out the actual final animation. So inside here you will see an AVI file. If we open this up, we'll leave it on repeat and we'll check it and see what we can improve on this. So let's have a look and see how it came out. I like the way the camera gets close to the ship here, and as it's spinning away, I think that looks pretty cool. I like the sort of reflections on the ship as well as it's moving towards the camera, and as it flies away. I like the sort of reflections on the side that you see. You can see that here. You can see as the ship comes in, you can see all the reflections on the side. So I think that looks pretty cool. I like the movement as well. I wasn't planning on doing that twisting movement of the front and the back of the ship. That wasn't kind of in my mind workflow, but I kind of think it makes it look a bit better. It makes it look a bit more dynamic, right? Rather than it being quite static, moving ship. Now it's rotating this object, which looks pretty cool. And then it's got this end rotation at the end, which looks pretty cool as well. So the one thing that I would probably fix on this animation, if you see when we get to sort of this camera position, if I flick through these frames, the ship is very static. It's not moving forward. Maybe I would have kept this rotation, would have been wise, right? To keep the back of this object rotating, or the whole ship rotating as the camera moves across. Because you can see it's pretty static there on all of these frames. Like up to here it's okay, but then all of a sudden the ship is like literally still here. It's only on a few frames, but it would have been much nicer if this ship continued to spin and maybe move forward a bit more as well at the same time. I think that would have made it look a lot better. But apart from that, let's just watch it one more time. I think it's looking pretty good. Yeah, this bit here, I think we need to keep that object rotating, or keep the whole ship rotating on that particular part of the project. But I'm quite happy with it. So then what you think? Hopefully your render came out really nice as well, like this one. And I'll be quite intrigued to see what you've done. So if you create something, I've seen quite a few people now sharing examples of their work in the YouTube description. So if you go and create something like this, just type in a link in the YouTube description. Maybe you've uploaded it to YouTube or Facebook or somewhere else. Just put that into the YouTube description. I'd like to see what work you've created out of this as well. And go and experiment. You don't have to do exactly the same as what I've done. Try and make it your own. Change the colors. You can make the ship slightly different shape. Your one probably won't come out exactly like mine anyway, because it's quite a complex shape. But play around with it. Experiment. Change the colors. Change the panels. You can make the ship wider. You can make it symmetrical. Right now it's kind of like this oval type shape, but you can make it whatever shape you want. You know, this is your project now, so I want you to go and experiment with it, and hopefully you'll learn some modeling from here. We did quite a few different things in here, right? We did some modeling. We created the land. We created the ship. We learned about animation as well. We learned about cameras and how to animate the camera. We created 2 different light sources. Although the light source is identical, I think that improves the scene as well, especially when the camera turns around. There's like an equivalent light source on the other side, so it looks like it's kind of a similar scene. Maybe it's going from like one light source to the other. That's kind of the idea behind it, but we should have really moved that that ship more forward when the camera turns around. I think that's the only thing that I'll probably say is a bit iffy about this animation, right? At this point here, when the ship is moving forward, we should have moved it further forward and kept it rotating. Apart from that, I think it looks very good. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this. Let's close this down. Tell me what you think in the YouTube description. I'd like to see what your thoughts are as well. And hopefully you learned quite a lot from this project. And I look forward to seeing you on the next DCP web tutorial.